Hello and welcome to Dishelved with Adam White. This week I'm going to be talking about Illuminations, a short story collection by Alan Moore. This came out towards the end of last year, and or maybe middle to end. And I really wanted to read it, but I just never got around to getting it, and ended up getting it for Christmas. So I just now finally got to read it, and this is what I thought of the stories. Um, the first story, called Hypothetical Lizard, it was a really strange story, but I enjoyed it, and you really got more into it as you went along. And it was about this strange place. I'd have to say that it's probably science fiction, if anything. And I, I don't I don't want to say a whole lot about any of the stories because since they're short stories, it gives too much away if you say much. But needless to say, there's a reason it's called Hypothetical Lizard, and it's a good reason. And it's kind of the theme of the story. And it was a really interesting character study, and it had kind of a surprise ending too. And but I really liked it. The next story was called Not Even Legend, and it's about a group of people who believe in the supernatural who get together and have kind of a conference on it every once in a while, and they decide they want to start looking into things other than like werewolves and vampires and stuff that people have always thought existed. One of them is suggesting that they ought to look into things that no one knows exist. And then you find out that maybe some of those things that you don't know exist don't want you to know they exist. So it's a really interesting story. The way that it's told is very interesting, and it was a really good story. I really liked it, and it took you a little bit. Again, with Alan Moore's writing, you really have to think about stuff when you're reading it, and but you got more into it as you read through it, and it was a really good. It was one of my favorite stories in here. The next one, location, is kind of an end of the world kind of tale. I can't really say much about it without giving anything away. So let me just say it was a really good story. It wasn't my favorite, but it was a really good story, and it had biblical themes. And so you just kind of got his notion of biblical themes in the end of the world, which is it was kind of funny. It was a funny story too. There is humor throughout this. The next one is called Cold Reading, and it's about a guy who's a psychic, and it's about him helping people communicate with the recently deceased. This was my favorite story. Cold Reading was. Very interesting character, main character, and it just was really creepy. And you get through to the end, and then it's really creepy. So I thought it was an excellent story, and it just really was by far the best story in here. Although I did like Not Even Legend a lot too. But Cold Reading, I think, was my favorite story in this, and I can't say anything more about it because it'll give it away. So you'll just have to take my word for it. The next one is The Improbably Complex High Energy State. This is kind of a Big Bang kind of story. It was kind of a creation of the universe type thing. I didn't quite get into this one as much as the other stories. It was There was humor in it, and there was parts that were funny, and it was just very strange and very Alan Moore-esque when he gets really strange like that. But again, it's kind of a Big Bang story, but it's told in a very different style, and it was an interesting story, but it wasn't my favorite in here. But it was pretty good. It was pretty good. The next one was called Illuminations, which is the title of the book. This was about things not being how you remember them to be when you were younger, when you get older. That's the theme of it. Um, I almost feel like I'm giving something away even saying that, but it doesn't. But it really just shows the difference between how you remember things as a child and how you encounter things and experience things as a child, and then when you go back and try to experience those same things as an adult, and it just isn't quite the same. And this one I thought was a really good story too. Really, a little more uh, less science fiction fantasy than the other ones. It was more of a realistic story, and I just thought that it was a really good story as well. Now we come to the problem of the book. It's called What We Can Know About Thunderman, and Thunderman is a very obvious stand in for Superman. And this story took up the majority of the book, which I don't really understand why. It was by far the longest story. It was more of a short novella than a short story like the other ones were. And this is really just a lambasting of the comic industry. It has thinly veiled references to people from the history of comics, and it really, I know it's probably intended to be funny in some ways, but it's really not. And it, um, it just was really kind of sad. It shows how bitter Alan Moore is about the comics industry and what it has done to him. And I agree with him in what he says about it in terms of in real life, where he kind of got screwed by DC and just comics in general, and he sees it as to how everybody in the past, like Jack Kirby and uh, Steve Ditko and all those people, Simon and Schuster, uh, all those people got screwed out of their creations, and I agree with that. And I agree with him. He has a reason to be bitter and angry about it. But this story felt a little childish. It just felt like, hey, I'm going to write this and say, screw you to the comics industry. And it's a shame because if it had been done in a different manner, then it could have been a good story. But I really didn't like the tone of it at all. Uh, I just, the things that go on in it are just outrageous, and all the characters are, thinly veiled versions of um, comic creators of the past and and executives of the past too. And they just, except maybe the few main characters, uh, including the main character whose name is Worsley Porlock, who just is a strange, strange character, but the stuff that happens in it is totally outrageous. It's not funny. It is really just kind of a sad document of bitterness. And I hate to say that because I really like Alan Moore and I love his comic work. Uh, I know he has a complicated history with it, and I respect that. But this story just seemed to be too bitter and just trying to be nasty about it. And I think Alan Moore is better than that. I really do. And so it was really kind of a disappointing story. And I really didn't like it at all. I found myself skimming through sections because it was just more of the same as you go through it, and the ending was kind of nebulous too. But it just really was saying, hey, the comic industry is evil, the people in it are bad people, and it just, the story did not work for me at all. So I'm not going to say anything more about it because it really takes away from the other stories that were really good in this. And there was two final stories in it. One of them was really short, but they were just kind of neither here nor there. They were just strange little ending stories that, after getting through what we can know about Thunderman, they just kind of rang hollow after that. But overall, I'm glad I read it. I mean, I could have done without the Thunderman story, but like I said, the hypothetical lizard, not even legend, cold reading, illuminations, there's lots of really good stories in here. So I would highly recommend reading this book, but I would not recommend reading what we can know about Thunderman because it really just kind of leaves you a little bit disillusioned about Alan Moore. Uh, Something else, and really the most important thing about this, is I got it as a gift from my sister and brother-in-law for Christmas. This, if you're, I assume most of my viewers are American, you might notice this looks a little different. It's because this is the British copy of it. They got it and ordered it from England. And what's really, really exciting about it is that it has Alan Moore's autograph in it. And that makes it probably the best Christmas present I got. So he's got a very simple signature, but it's on a book plate in here. And at first I was just like, oh, great, I've been wanting to read this. And they're like, well, did you look inside? And I was like, no. And so I looked inside and saw that it was autographed. And I just thought that's absolutely outstanding because Alan Moore is someone who I never thought I'd get his autograph. Just because he doesn't seem like the type that does, I mean, he's not going to do any conventions or anything like that. And I just didn't ever dream that I'd get his autograph because, like I said, I've always loved his comics work. But So I was really excited about that because I love autographs. If you've watched the show at all, you know that I love autographs. And this has his autograph in it. So I was really, really excited about this. So, like I said, there are some really good stories in this, really good stories. Just the Thunderman one just kind of was really upsetting to me that's what it's come to between him and comics. But lots of good stories, so I would recommend it. And that's all I have to say about it this week. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I will catch you guys next week.